Hello, everybody. Welcome to the National Parents Union Nightly Restorative Check-In. I am your host, Marisol Quevedo Rerucha. I am the wife to Daniel. I am the mother to Camerina, Emilia, and Sofia. I am the daughter to Irma and Abraham. I am the grandmother to Isabela Luna and Cynthia Iliana. I'm the granddaughter to Camerina, Alejandro, Carmen, and Francisco. I also am a sister to Alex, Atia, and Cameron. And I'm the niece to my tia Yoli and two others. So thank you for allowing me that space to introduce myself. As always, I think it's so important to explain. But I believe every room that I walk into, I carry them with me. And that my voice is not just the voice of my, my own voice and the voice of my experiences, but the voice of all those that have poured love, challenge, wisdom into me. And, especially my ancestors who prayed for me. And I carry those prayers and those hopes and those dreams also for my grandchildren and for my future, for the future, for our future ancestors. So thank you for that. It grounds me. It reminds me, introducing them reminds me the power of my blood. It reminds me of the responsibility that I choose to carry into the world in representing myself, but also the responsibility of caring for others. And so I just want to thank you for that. So I wanted to let you know that on Fridays, Dr. Anjali, as you already know, she hosts the show, and she is going to have, if you're not following her, make sure you follow her, but she's going to have a former boyfriend of hers on, and they've been friends for 17 years post-dating, which I think is just really beautiful. But he sounds like an amazing human being. His name is Israel Green, and they're going to be talking about vulnerability. And he does leadership coaching and speaking. So I just think it's going to be a phenomenal conversation. And I also am a little nosy, so I like to be in the mix with people and see like the energy and the exchanges. And she has such beautiful conversations and exchange with people. So please make sure that you tune in with her on Friday, and then I will be back with you on Monday. So which is the 1st of August or the 3rd of August. So as always, we do our 4-7-8 breathing technique that Dr. Anjali shared with me and that I share with you. We breathe in for 4 seconds, we hold for 7, and we release for 8. We do this 4 times. And I will count down for you so that you can just focus on your breathing and give you this time out to ground and center, to release any tension you might be feeling, but just to really allow you to feel again grounded and then be able to enjoy the experience of the conversation with our guest. So go ahead if you want to close your eyes. I always like to have my feet planted firmly on the ground, your hands gently on your lap, and take a breath out. Inhale, 2, 3, 4, hold, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, release, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Inhale, 2, 3, 4, hold, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, release, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Inhale, 2, 3, 4, hold, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, release, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Inhale, 2, 3, 4, hold, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, release, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Thank you. I needed that. I'm so ready. I feel so ready to have our guests come on. So tonight we're going to be talking to Ruth Lopez, and I cannot tell you how happy I am to have her come on. Ruth is a dear friend of mine, and I will let her introduce herself as I do with all of my guests as soon as we bring her on. But I've had a really long day. So I had my first meeting early this morning, and then it's just been a long day. So I'm feeling re-energized and recharged, but in a very calm and focused way. So I'm excited to have her. Oh, there she is. Well, hello there.
Hey, Marisol, how are you?
I'm super happy. Okay, Ruth, so this is what I have everybody do. Please introduce yourself, and you can include anything that you would like. If you want to tell us about your family, where you live, the work that you do, what your passions are, anything that you would like to share with us.
Okay, well, so my name is Maurice Lopez. I live in Central California, in Kings County specifically. So I'm 3 hours north of LA and 3 hours south of San Francisco. I work on federal education policy with a DC-based firm, and that's where I met Marisol. I was born in Los Angeles, though, and I moved to the Central Valley when I was 5. So I was raised in rural California. So rural is, you know, part of where my heart is. Education is obviously a very important aspect of my life, and that's why I work on what I do. And although I do work on DC-based politics, I also am involved in local politics here. I have worked on several campaigns. I even ran for school board once, and then, but unfortunately did not make it onto the board. I've done anything from run marathons to start a garden this year. So I'm super excited. I have no idea what Marisol wants to talk about. So I'm just happy to be here.
And the conversations, they're just based on, I go off of, I really try to go off of what you say as opposed to what I know, which is hard with people that I know really well, like you. So what I'm really interested in, because also, you know, in us getting to know each other, sometimes we don't get like all of the story, you know? Right. And so I love using this time to be nosy and ask questions like, hey, well, I never, like, how did you, so that's the flow that will go. So this is my first question to you. What is it that drove you to education? Because, so, I mean, and in a deep way, because you're doing educational policy work in DC, but you also, like you shared, you ran for school board, and it is something you've also worked on local campaigns. Why is education something that is important to you? What's your story behind that?
I think that's actually a really good question, because I've had people, I've made this connection as an adult where I think my parents, so as I kind of mentioned earlier, I was born in LA. So my family lived actually in South LA, formerly known as South Central LA. And so I'm the 7th of 9 children, and my oldest sister is 10 years older than me. So when my sister got to high school age, my parents decided we need to move because they didn't want my siblings going to high school in South LA. My dad was a janitor or a custodian at the high schools, and so he realized what type of environment some of those high schools were in, and he didn't want his children in that environment. One of his former principals actually made the move up to Central California, and so when my dad reached out to that principal, he's like, hey, you should come up here. Like, it's pretty, it's a good area to raise your children. And so my dad followed suit and he came up here. And I think that kind of started my foundation of like, education is important. And it just kind of lasted throughout. So when I moved here to Central California, one of the first—
How old were you?
I was 5. So
okay.
I went to school here, K to 12. Even though I was born in urban Los Angeles, I consider myself a rural, person. I remember my mom advocating for me when we first got here, because they wanted to place me in the English learner classes, which are here. They were basically, I guess, what they call sheltered, right? Because they're not inclusive of in the mainstream classrooms. And my mom didn't want that for me. And she's like, no, she actually does speak English. Even if I don't speak English, I know she does, because she has 6 siblings older than her who have been in school and they speak English at home. And so she's picked it up. So she's okay in mainstream classrooms. And I feel like, so between the decision of my parents, I feel like whether I realized it or not as a kid, that kind of started my foundation and realizing how important education is.
Well, and I think that's a huge message. And the other piece, how beautiful that your family, that your parents had that conversation with you, that you were raised in that way of knowing that you were moving and leaving everything that you knew for a different life. There was reasons behind it. I think that's a really beautiful way to be raised.
Yeah, well, my sister didn't love it at the time. Let me tell you.
I can imagine. Because she was 15. She was 15?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
I can imagine.
So.
But you at 5, knowing that, and for that to cement for you, like, education is this important. Yeah. Like, my sister's education is this important, that all of us are going to move. Like, that's a huge message. And for you to know that, because, you know, some people are raised in families where they don't have those conversations. We're moving because I say we're moving. Punto final. Like, that's it.
Right.
And so having that, and so was there anything, so you knew that education was important. Your mother also made it very clear that you being in a space where, I don't know how to put this, but there's definitely, you know, our English learners, as we see in the data, struggle. And so she wanted you in a space where you could get all of the, I think, you know, the way that our system is, but have all of the benefits of the system. And so that was another message, that your education is important and that your mom's going to fight for you.
Right.
And then so
introduction to advocacy.
Was your mama?
Yeah.
And so then after that, though, how did that, like, when you were making the decision to go to college, you were making the decision to, like, what you were going to study, how did education come up for you again?
You know, it's interesting. I was thinking about that in terms of how, even though my parents were my foundation for that education, it was really hard for me when I made the transition to college. Because I was a top 10 student. I got into all the universities that I applied to, but I was also 17 at the time. And so my mom was like, you're not old enough yet to leave. Even though technically I was still going to turn 18 later, that, you know, after school started. She was like, no, I told you not to apply. I don't know why you're doing this. And to give you a little bit of more context, all of my siblings ahead of me went to community college and then transferred to a 4-year. So it was really hard for her to understand that going directly to a 4-year institution wasn't skipping a step, because that's the way that she framed it for me. She's like, no, ¿qué te crees? Like, muy inteligente. Like,
who do you think you are? Who do you think you are?
Right. She was like, no, you're not skipping this step. If you're really that good, you're going to get back into that university after you do 2 years here at the community college. And so it was a hard struggle between my parents, because I almost felt like, because my dad was still a custodian at the high school that I went. So he transferred from those LA schools and he automatically started working as a custodian in one of the high schools here. And so my dad was getting all the feedback from teachers being like, oh, your daughter's so smart. She got into all these universities that my children, because I went to school with a couple of other teachers' kids who didn't get into the same universities. And so he felt really like he needed to support me in that transition. Whereas,
I'm sure he was very proud, right? So the custodian's daughter is getting into the big schools. So was it like the big UC systems, like UC, like the big schools?
Yeah. So I got into 4 UCs that I applied to, because, you know, as a low income kid, the UCs provide 4 free fee waivers to apply. I mean, I think they still do, or at least they did when I applied. So, you know, I was just checking off the boxes. I'm old enough where it was still the paper application. And so, and because my mom didn't want me applying, I only applied to the schools that provided me fee waivers, right? So, and not have, and having my siblings not having gone straight to a 4-year, I wasn't quite sure how that process necessarily took place. So, you know, there was a recruiter for like a private school that came to, you know, and so she gave me a fee waiver, so I got into that school, you know, that sort of thing. But it's not like I went too much out of my way to defy my mother in that sense. But
So your dad became your ally.
yes.
Your dad, I'm sure, was very proud because teachers were telling him, like, your daughter is, and you must feel so proud. She got into all of these schools that like my kids didn't get into. And so he became your ally. So what happened?
I felt like I had to, again, defy my mother and be like, well, look, mom, I'm actually going to do this. And so I took her to all the university parent type things. So, you know, they stayed in the dorm. We got a tour by one of the current Latina who spoke Spanish to be able to, you know, convey, because my mom didn't speak English. So, she was able to kind of talk to her. But, you know, even after the campus tour and after all of that, my mom's like, why would you go to, so I went to Berkeley. And so Berkeley has a lot of hills. So not only was she sore, like physically, like mentally, she just also couldn't fathom. She was like, this university is supposedly like one of the best in the country. And here we are, we have like homeless people sleeping like on campus and things like that. And I was like, Mom, don't look at that. It's like what we learned in the classroom. Unfortunately, like she wasn't convinced by that. I still went ahead and enrolled. And I think a lot of that had to do with my mom being a little cautious with me being a female. And she thought maybe if I went to school, I would maybe get pregnant while being away. And, you know, since she wasn't going to be watching me, she wasn't going to be, you know, but after maybe the first, maybe second year, into my second year, she was like my biggest advocate. After that, she was talking to other parents being like, hey, your kids can do the same thing like my daughter. Like she's doing really well, you know. My daughter worked while she was in high school. You know, she still did good in school. You know, now she's at one of the best schools, you know, and just, and I love that about her. Like, even though she was hesitant at first, she then became my biggest like cheerleader, and helping others, you know, kind of understand the process and kind of, you know, because that's one of our biggest obstacles sometimes is like, because you don't understand the process, you kind of fear what's you know, what's going to happen. Like, can I trust the system? Can I not? Can I, you know, but you have to trust your child that however you raise them, they're going to, you know, they're going to do well because you instilled those morals and that guidance.
That's very easy to say, but it is the hardest thing to do as a parent. It really is. It's a very hard thing to do, is to trust that you laid the foundation. And I think it's just so beautiful that your parents were able to experience that through you. And it sounds like your brothers and sisters as well. So what did you study? Because you went from, did you go into were you studying education?
Oh yeah, like, that's where we're going, right? I totally forgot. I apologize for that. As an undergrad, I actually studied political science and Spanish because I felt like even though I speak Spanish, part of me wanted to learn the academic Spanish because when I would visit family, they're like, eres bien pocha, ni sabes hablar. And I was like, no, I can speak Spanish. And so I took it upon myself to learn and, you know, in an academic way to learn Spanish. And then the political science was obviously kind of a interest in law and policy. But halfway through my career, I started working, actually, my very first year at Cal, I started tutoring at a middle school there in Berkeley at Longfellow Middle School. And because of that, I was already gaining credits as an education minor. So I also minored in education. So I also ran a mentoring program after I stopped tutoring. I went back to that school and I was part of their mentoring program. And so with that, then I started taking classes with the legendary John Hurst, who he established the education department at Berkeley. And he kind of led my path in terms of like further founding education as you know, a societal equalizer, I would say. He was my biggest advocate in terms, I didn't even realize this until like after he wrote like the letter of recommendation for me when I was applying for a program, and I didn't realize how much he gathered from my experience and everything that I did. And so that's how I did the education minor. And then my last semester at Cal, I actually did the UCDC program, which is the University of California in Washington, D.C. And you live like in their dorms and stuff. And I actually applied to work at MALDEF, the Mexican American Legal Defense and Educational Fund, because I always had an interest in law. As an undergrad, I often, I volunteered with the East Bay Sanctuary Covenant. And so that's where I would translate for political asylum cases. And whether it's with the attorney, you know, with the psychologist, or even it themselves at like the immigration hearing. And so I thought MALDEF would be a pretty good placement for me in doing this program. And while at MALDEF, a position opened up to work on education policy. And so they wanted to keep me on board to work on that program. And that kind of paved my way into education policy, because I didn't know that the MALDEF office, actually, the DC office was only a policy office. They did no litigation out of that office. And so that kind of paved my way into ed policy.
I think that is, so you don't have kids. But you do not have children, but you are an advocate for education. And I think going back to what you said about it being the equalizer, like having that passion, and then also like the way that the person that your mom was, who like, so she fought for you, but then she also, after you made your way, you defied her, like you say, and went to the university, but she started spreading that, like, and talking to other parents about releasing their kids to do that. And so like that mixture of like community activism, community advocacy, you know?
Yeah, so at the same time, when I did the UCDC program, when I moved across the country, she's like, otra vez, te me vas a ir lejos. Like, she was like, why are you choosing to like go further away from me? She was like, none of my other children moved out of state, and now here you are, you want to move clear across the country.
Did you ever watch that movie, the My Big Fat Greek Wedding?
You know, I've been meaning to watch it because I'm told we're very similar.
Well, there's this, and it's actually like a meme, and my daughter and I, that's one of my oldest daughter, the dad, so she's a grown woman, she's in her 30s, and she wants to go to community college, not move out of the house, nothing. She still lives with her parents. She was like, I want to go to community college. And he's like, he turns to her and he's like, why do you want to leave me? So your mom was like, why do you want to leave me?
Yeah, but at the same time, I think it did take her, you know, a little bit of time. And then she was like, look, my daughter is working like 2 blocks from the White House. Like, how awesome is that, you know? So, because the MALDEF office was 2 blocks from the White House. So it was, you know, I think it tore my mom, but at the same time, she was also very proud of everything that I did.
So how has your life been? So you moved to DC, but how have you been now with these changes? You work with a firm that does educational policy in DC, so, but you're living in Central California, so you've already worked remotely. How have things been for you with the life of COVID that we've all been experiencing for the last months, March, going into 5 months?
Right. I mean, I think the biggest change is that I still work, right? I think my family has had always a difficulty understanding working remotely. Like they're like, well, how do you work? Like it's
Like you're at home.
right. And so I'm like, everybody, welcome to my world now, because everybody's working remote, right? But with the difference now that I do take care of my sister's kids during the day. So yeah, so I've had anywhere from 1 to 7 kids at my home during the school or during work hours, you know, trying to get them to do things. Sometimes it's pretty chill. Sometimes it's like I'm on a phone call and they can't shut up. But they're kids, so.
So you are like right now, are you teaching them and working with them like so that they're having some learning, or are you just babysitting?
It's been a majority babysitting, but when they were in school, I would work some of their, you know, help them with some of their, you know, whatever they didn't understand. Because my sister isn't necessarily the best at technology either. And so just helping them get online, helping them understand some of their math homework, which my sister was like, yeah, math isn't my strong suit. Things like that. I have tried to like do activities for them. 2 of my nieces are Girl Scouts, so I'm a Girl Scout volunteer as well. So I get the emails and I'm like, okay, let's print out this packet. This is what you should do for this badge and stuff like that. But other than that, I don't necessarily have the capacity to actually sit with them for hours at a time because I am working. So, but I am, sorry.
Go ahead.
I was just gonna go back to the comment about how I'm not a parent, but yet I'm involved in a lot of activities with children. I am also a soccer coach and have I'm on the board of AYSO, our local American Youth Soccer Organization. I know AYSO is a national organization, so there's chapters all over the country, and so people there have also been super supportive, and they're also amazed of like my ability to be engaged in these activities when I don't have children in the league. But what I tell them is what started me in the league were children, because I used to be a foster parent. And so my last batch of siblings, they wanted to be in soccer. So I was like, okay. And I'm the type of individual that like, once I get engaged in something, I'm all on board. So, so I became a coach, and then I became part of the soccer board organization, and I still am to this day, even though they don't live with me. But fortunately, those kids are now my nieces and nephews, because they now live with my sister. So I do see them daily.
So you were a foster parent.
Yes.
And so you work full time, you were running for the board, what made you decide to go into foster parenting? Because you're also, I'm gonna blow you up a little bit. So you're not married, you're single.
Right.
Right? So you're a single woman who is very career driven, very much involved in your community. What made you decide to be a foster parent for the time that you did it?
So what started me on this was actually, so like I mentioned before, I was working on local campaigns. And so one of the volunteers there, she was 17. And I realized that, halfway through the campaign, she stopped coming in, and I'm like, hey, what's going on? How come you weren't coming? And she was like, oh, it's because I'm a foster kid, and we have these, which at the time I didn't know that's what they were called. They're ILP classes. It's independent living program. And so she stopped coming because she was going to those classes. So then she could, learn some life skills. And I was like, oh, cool. So like, what is your plan when you turn 18? And she was like, well, I'm going to move out of the foster care system because, I don't like where I live. And then I'll graduate high school. And then I was like, wait, hold on. So you're going to turn 18 before you graduate high school? And she's like, yeah. And I was like, yeah, well, you're not going to be able to graduate high school if you try to live on your own before you do that. And so I kind of made a pact with her, and I was like, hey, if I become a foster parent, you promise me that you're going to finish high school. And she's like, yes, because she didn't want to stay in the living situation that she was. And so I submitted all the paperwork, and 2 months after the election, she moved into my home. She stayed with me for 1.5 years, and she got her CNA license, she got her driver's license, she got bank accounts. I set her all up, and so that's what got the ball rolling. She had a friend that needed a place to stay, so then I had 2 teenagers. We also made the pact of like, you need to finish high school if you're going to be living here, because education is very important to me, and if I'm doing this, it's because I want you to finish high school. I want you to have that, diploma. And so that's kind of what started it. And that's why I kind of, so I did it for like 3.5 years. I told the social workers in the FFA, which is a foster family agency. I told them, if there are, teenagers who have the drive and the determination to want to finish high school, I'm your person. And so over that course of time, I helped 4 teenagers graduate high school. And then I had one of them was a sibling set, so that's the one that had the younger kids who wanted to play soccer.
You're so amazing. I'm wondering everything that you do, and also you look super young. Like you look like you're 20 years old. But you're not. Or I'm not going to ask you how old you are, but I know you're not 20.
I was in my 20s when I brought in my first foster youth. Yes, and so I think that's kind of what drove the kids to want to live in my home. They're like, I've never had a foster parent so young or so like different, and it kind of.
But you were also very strict. Like I remember having conversations with you, and I was taking like lessons with like setting down, like this is the way things would be, like this is your work time, this is and the way that you were able to support them.
Yeah, but they did, they at the time too, that's when I was like doing a lot of running, and so I would do like my 10-mile runs on the weekends and stuff, so they would sleep in and I would go for my runs. So they were not happy that I did not have junk food in my home. That was like the #1 complaint to social workers. They're like, it's not that awesome living with Ruth because she doesn't have good food in the house. But they learned how to eat healthy too. So, and that's one thing that I do remember. One time that I went to the grocery store with my oldest, I was like, we walked right in, and then one side of the store was like a bunch of chips and stuff, and then the other side were like apples and other veggies. And I was like, okay, you can grab whatever snacks you want to take home. And she was like, I want an apple. She was like, I'm craving an apple. She was like, I don't think I've ever would have done that if I didn't live with you. Like, how? She was like, what did you do to me? She's like, normally I would go grab like Flamin' Hot Cheetos or something. I don't know how long that lasted after she left, but I
think it's something all of our bodies know and love, right? Like going back to the earth. So it's just being reintroduced to it.
Yeah, but I just thought that was really interesting that she recognized that and she vocalized it. She's like, oh my God, I have you to either thank or hate for this. So that kind of stuck with me.
So everything that you do and that you've done, and I know you mentioned running, but working full time, you're taking care of your sister's kids. You have 1 to 7 kids. What are their ages? Ages little to what?
8 to 17.
So a house full of kids. You're on the board of the AYSO. You're a soccer coach. How do you take care of yourself? How do you care for yourself in the way that allows you to do this work without being depleted or have you not figured that out yet?
I think I've gone up and down, and I think it has a lot to do with my ability to work out, believe it or not. Like I remember one time I broke down with my last set of kids. I was like, guys, I really, really need to go exercise. Like I need to go for a run, or I need to go to the gym, and I need you guys to like behave because I'm about to lose it and I don't want to lose it, but this is what I need to do for myself. Because I think I was at my best when I was exercising. I used to run 6 days a week and have a rest day. And so going from that to going to nothing was extremely difficult on my body, I feel. And I've been meaning to really trying to get back to it, but it's so hard once you lose it. So yeah, and being at the gym was actually one of my social aspects of because working from home and not seeing anybody but myself and the kids and the social workers, like the social workers were like the only people I would see my age, right? Besides my siblings, right? But so the gym was I felt like it created a new friendships and new family there. So but so with that said, it goes up and down depending on if I see some of those gym family members or not.
And so what are the other ways? So now I think especially in this time, right, of COVID, I don't know, so I don't go to the gym. But I don't think I think some of them are open. Like I've seen some. So what is it that you like, how are you taking care of yourself now?
So I've actually been trying to I converted my garage into like a semi gym. So I don't have like a lot of stuff in there, but I do have I have a trampoline, I have medicine balls, I have a couple of weights, I have, you know, some of those types of things. And so the trampoline is actually pretty fun. It brings you back to like, you know, your childhood of like, and they say that trampoline workouts are pretty good. So I've been doing some of that, not consistently. I'm really trying. I'm like, okay, this week I will start again. And, you know, I keep telling myself that. And I do try to walk with my nieces sometimes, like with the dogs. I'm like, hey, it's our time to go take the dogs for a walk. Doing things like that. But I haven't been super successful, but I do feel a lot better when I do go out and take a walk around the block, you know, or I'm able to jump on the trampoline. Being out in the garden too, how I mentioned earlier, it kind of, you know, brings me joy, just seeing things grow, seeing, you know, how like it's an instant satisfaction type of thing where you're just like, oh my God, this was like this, and now it's like this, you know. So I'm blessed to be able to have a yard and be able to do that as well.
So talk to us a little bit more about the garden. How did that start? And what are you growing?
So, I mean, this was all pre-COVID. I wanted to do a garden. I have been wanting to do one for a while because like I mentioned with the kids that I had before, when I had them, I wanted them to be able to do different activities at home. And one of those is like, we picked up some plants that it was actually at the Dollar Tree or the 99-cent store. And I was like, all right, let's take these home. And we just planted them wherever. And we saw how successful it was. I was like, oh my gosh, like these things actually grow, and you know, they're pretty tasty. And so after they left, I was like, you know what, I should do like a real garden. And so unfortunately, my dogs kicked my fence down for the most part. And so that kind of kick-started and being like, okay, I need to redo the fence. This is a good time to redo my yard and kind of put a garden down. So then I feel like I fell into the COVID garden, you know, start because it happened in April and we were already shut down. But I was freaking out because I was like, how am I, if they close everything, am I going to be able to get all the materials to like redo my fence? Am I going to be able to do all these things? And so that's kind of how it all started. I mean, it was just with the memory of doing it before, but being more purposeful this time with actually building raised beds and that sort of thing. And then I have pretty good yard space on both sides of my house. And so I did it on the south side, which gets the most sun. And so I put tomatoes, I put a variety of tomatoes. So I have beef steaks, I have cherry tomatoes, I have big boys, I have tomatillos, and then I have a variety of chiles. I have jalapenos, obviously I have serranos. I have these Santa Fe yellow peppers that are growing. I did some bell peppers as well. They haven't been super successful, but I've gotten a couple. I put a habanero down. It hasn't given me anything yet. I put poblano. Poblanos have come out. I did cantaloupe, watermelon, zucchinis, yellow squash, the crooked yellow squashes. I don't know if you've seen those. They have a crooked neck. And I did corn. Corn was super fun to watch grow, like, as it grows like that. ¿Qué más?
So what is it like to like have to eat fruit that you planted, or and vegetables, food that you planted and then watched grow, and then like the taste compared to what a lot of us know, which is the supermarket?
Yeah, no, tomatoes don't compare. Like, homegrown tomatoes are the tastiest ever. And I think that's part of the reason why I wanted to grow them, because I, had a taste of it 2 years ago when I had the kids. I was like, oh my gosh, this is why people grow their own stuff. It's so delicious. And it's also been very satisfactory to be able to grow this produce and then give it away to people who need it or who enjoy it. And so that brings me a lot of pleasure too. And now it gives, my nieces, when they come over, one of them, she's like, Tia, where's the bucket? So she grabs her bucket and then she goes and harvests all the red tomatoes, because some of them, turn red the next day when they weren't the day before. So.
In Becoming, which Michelle Obama's memoir, she talked about planting the garden and the thousands of pounds of food that it produced, and at the White House, and that the food, a lot of it went to schools to be used in their meals. But the bountifulness of gardens is just, it's so amazing to me. So that's next year. That's my goal. I want to have a garden. So there's a couple things I need to do here at the house to make that happen. But my goal is for next year, and see how it goes.
I'm down to go visit you if COVID's all over by then.
Yeah, I'm gonna need you to help me build those beds. Help me build the. Okay, so my question to you: what's next? So you have done so much in your life. What is next for you?
I don't know. I ask myself that all the time. I'm actually participating right now in the Hope Leadership Institute, HLI. I don't know if you've heard of that institute. And so,
what does HOPE stand for?
Hispanas Organizing for Political Equity, I believe. And so I'm part of their Leadership Institute, which kind of targets Latinas to move on to something different, whether it's play a different role or run for elected office, or that sort of thing. And even though we're doing everything remote now because of COVID, there are some amazing women who are part of that cohort, and I just feel like it expanded my network of amazing women. And a lot of them are encouraging each other to like run for office, because our perspective is often needed. And although I did do that school board run when I first moved back to California from DC, I hadn't necessarily realistically, reconsidered it. But I feel like these ladies are like further encouraging me, like, hey, Ruth, like, you do already do a lot for the community. Have you reconsidered? And so I'm thinking about it. I'm seeing what that might look like. Because part of me also wants to, take it slow and not, be so involved in everything. And I feel like, but I know part of me is like, if I do that, I don't know if I will feel like I'm doing my part, if that makes any sense. Like, I'll feel like I'm detaching from my community when I really should be serving my community. So I don't know. We'll see. Because I will be honest. Like, this past year or so, I have been a little burnt out from a lot of the campaigns, and a lot. I think the political division that we have in this country right now has been exhausting, to say the least. And I feel like living where I live, there's a lot of how do I say this? It's just I'm like at a loss for words. I and I got a little distracted, I'll be honest, because I was receiving a couple of text messages. You probably heard
I
this.
was wondering what that sound was. You were talking about the division in our country and the community that you live in.
Yeah.
So is the community that you live in, are you feeling the division there in the community that you're living in? Or is the community that you're living in, could it be beneficial to have more voices elevated and in decision-making positions?
It's more, I mean, there is some division, but I just feel like one side might be a little bit more vocal than another side. And so I feel like, and there's also this, and I just feel like this is not anything unique to my community. I feel like it's across the country sometimes, where if somebody finds out that you're of a certain political party, they don't want anything to do with you after knowing, that you affiliate with one or the other. It doesn't matter what you are. Like, I just feel like some people aren't open to dialogue sometimes after they realize how you affiliate. And I think that is politically, I mean, it's not like everything becomes political. And even though, like, I tell people even though I am in policy, it's not the same as politics. And I feel everything has become political, and everyday life.
How do you differentiate those?
Because to me, politics is more of is the campaigns. It's more like the process of getting somebody elected. It's like, understanding the game and how things work. Whereas, like, policy is the actual laws that are written and the advocacy that goes, towards making those changes to our current laws. Because when I first moved back from DC, people were like, yeah, you're going to be awesome, like running, when I ran for school board. And I was like, no, this is all new territory for me. I was like, I do policy. I don't do politics. Like, this is, a completely different ball game. And so that's kind of how I differentiate the two. And it's important to, I think, understand both, because I think you can be a better policy advocate when you understand the politics behind getting to that point.
Well, definitely both, right? Because in order to really, and I think sometimes that with your definition, people that are in politics, like, really needing to have, I think, that honor and the respect for policy, and I think, like, the deep workings of it.
Yeah. And I mean, really a lot of people who work in politics, like whether on the campaign trail and stuff, they might not have the experience of writing policy. They know how to run a campaign really well, but they don't necessarily understand what it takes to get a bill into law.
So you're considering potentially running for office, but now you also shared you're in this fellowship, this Hope Fellowship. And I'm just amazed at everything that it is that you do. One of the things, so the National Parents Union, we are a group of parents from across the nation, and I describe us as advocates, activists, and agitators, but people who are really warriors for kids, and not just our own children, but all children, and the cross section intersectionality of children that deserve a high quality public education. And so with that in mind, and with all of the experience you have as a foster parent, as somebody who has worked and is working in policy, with somebody who's worked with youth, and your own experience, what recommendations do you have for parents right now? I think especially, like, with what's going on with the situation with COVID, and parents who maybe don't know what to do, they're responding to the system, getting involved, but what recommendations do you have right now?
I mean, I think it's important to talk to your school leadership and voice your concerns, whether it's with the principal or with the superintendent and the school board. I think you need to advocate for your child, or for the children in your community. What, depending whether you want schools to open or you want them to not open, and just provide a virtual learning, but with accommodations, depending on what it is, or whatever the needs, or anything like that. So that would be my advice. And then, once you get it there, and if they try to push back on you and saying, well, it's without, we can't do that, or we can't, then go to your state legislators, talk to your state senators, talk to your state assembly person, and advocate with your congressperson as well. Like, don't take no for an answer when it's something like that's so important to you, and it's important to your child and to your community. They might, at the end of the day, take your recommendation and work from there.
I want to thank you for being with us. It was such a joy and an honor to talk to you. I am always amazed at everything that you do. And I had forgotten about the leadership, about your fellowship. Yeah. Even though the last time we texted, we had talked about that. You are just so amazing. And I'm so, I know how proud your parents are to have the daughter that they have, and for all the work that you do for your community. I'm proud of you, and in that way, that with that mother's pride,
Yeah, no, and I felt it, and I know this, and we hadn't shared with the viewers here, but I did lose my mom 3 years ago to cancer. And so that's another advocacy point for me, is as healthcare, and just bringing awareness to gynecological cancers, which often do not get, I think, the same awareness that other cancers do. And so, but when she did pass, she actually had like a folder for each of us, from the kids, of all of our different accomplishments and all the different things that we've done. And so I was super surprised when my dad handed me my folder of stuff. One of the most recent things that was on there, or within those files, was she saved the, what do you call it? Like the little pamphlet that I had made for a scholarship dinner, because I am one of the co-founders for a local scholarship here for my elementary school. And so, obviously I invite my parents to attend the scholarship dinner and see all the recipients and that sort of stuff. And so she saved the program and put it into my file of accomplishments. And it made me feel so, like, I was like, oh my gosh, my mom really like saw this as something to save, because she was proud that I was doing that. And so it was just like a little reminder of being like, okay, these are things that I approve of, and you should continue to do.
I am so glad that you shared that with us, because, I really believe that, I believe that the spirits of our ancestors continue to guide us. And I've shared this many times before, but I also believe that when you connect and share yourself, and you share your family stories, or you share with other people, that those stories become a part of your DNA. And that, like, doing that for your children, that act of putting things away, and she had 9 kids. Yes. But like this, specifically for this child, the things that I'm proud of and that I'm saving for them, I need to do that for my kids. So thank you. Thank you. What a beautiful gift. See, she's still giving to the world, and she's still giving through you. Yes,
she is. Well, thank you for inviting me to be part of this show. I hope I didn't bore people out with my life story.
No, not at all. Not at all. I love you very much. So I will say goodbye from here. And please make sure to watch the show on Friday. Dr. Anjali will be with Israel Green. Yeah, her show is fantastic. She's with you every Friday. So I do Monday, Wednesday, and she does Friday. I will see you on Monday. Thank you very much for being with us. Please know that you are loved, that you are cared for, and you are prayed for. Good night.
Good night.
Oh, my friend.